The land deed was never going to be in my name. In Thailand, a foreigner can't own land. My girlfriend's lawyer, who was also her cousin, forgot to mention that part. And in that one moment, I realized the $150,000 I'd just spent building our dream house was gone. It wasn't my dream, and it wasn't my house. It was hers. I looked at my US bank account on my phone. I had exactly $1,247 left. After working my whole life, I was 63 years old, 8,000 miles from home, and basically broke. And the worst part? I let it happen. But to understand how I ended up there, on that porch with my world collapsing, you need to understand the man I was before all of this. You need to go back to Toledo, Ohio. For 35 years, my life was simple. I was a long-haul trucker. I owned my own rig, a Peterbilt I knew better than I knew most people. My days were measured in miles, and my years were measured in freight delivered on time. I was a practical man, a capable man, the kind of guy who could rebuild a diesel engine on the side of I-80 in a snowstorm because that's what needed to be done. I prided myself on being nobody's fool. My wife, Susan, and I were married for 35 years. We bought a small house, paid it off, raised 2 good kids. We built a life, not an exciting one, maybe, but a solid one. When she passed away from cancer, the silence in that house was deafening. The kids were grown, living their own lives in other states, as they should. It was just me. For 5 years, I rattled around in that empty house, the quiet getting louder every winter. After a lifetime of work, I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. I sold the house for $180,000. My rig, my pride and joy, went for $50,000. I combined that with my 401k and savings, and my total nest egg was about $580,000. It was a number that represented every single mile I'd ever driven, every late night, every missed birthday. It was my life's work, converted into a number in a bank account. The problem wasn't the money, it was the nights. Endless, quiet nights in a gray Ohio winter. I felt old. I felt invisible. And that's when I found the dating sites. I was just scrolling, just looking for a distraction. Then a message popped up. A woman named Nok, 28 years old, from a city in Thailand called Chiang Mai. Her photos were bright and full of life, everything my world wasn't. And her messages, they were a constant stream of flattery. Hello, my handsome man. Thinking of you today. For a man who felt like a ghost in his own life, that attention was a powerful drug. My practical mind kicked in, or at least I told myself it did. It started treating loneliness like a logistics problem. I looked at my Social Security. I looked at that $580,000, and I did the math. I could draw a small amount from my savings, and with my monthly check, I could live like a king in Thailand. My brain framed it as the most logical move in the world. I said it out loud to myself in that empty kitchen. Why freeze to death alone in Ohio when I can live in paradise with a beautiful woman who adores me? I saw all the warning lights on the dashboard, but I just kept on driving. I was solving a problem. I was taking back control. It was the last smart decision I thought I ever made. The real trigger wasn't a single event. It was the snow. It was a Tuesday night in February, the kind of wet, heavy snow that seals you into your own house. I'd just gotten off the phone with my son. He's a good kid, but he was busy. His wife, the kids, his job. I could hear their life happening in the background while I was sitting there in total silence. After we hung up, the quiet in that house was so loud it felt like an engine screaming. And right then, my phone lit up. Hello, my handsome man. I am thinking of you in cold Ohio. It was a message from Nok, with a picture of her eating mango sticky rice at some outdoor market, sunlight everywhere. And in that moment, the fantasy felt more real than my own living room. That night, I stopped just scrolling and I started planning. I'm a man who believes in a plan. You don't drive a 40-ton rig across the country on a whim, and you don't move your life to the other side of the world on a feeling. I opened my laptop and I went to work. I spent 2 weeks doing nothing but research. Cost of living in Chiang Mai. I pulled up websites, forums, YouTube videos of other old guys who had done the same thing. They all said the same thing. You can live like a king for $1,500 a month. I mapped it out on a spreadsheet, just like I used to map out my fuel costs and my mileage. My Social Security check was a little over $2,000 a month. If I pulled just 3% from my nest egg each year, about $17,000, I'd be living on almost $3,500 a month. Tax-free, that was more than enough. The numbers worked. The logic was solid. I researched the visa. The non-immigrant OA for retirees. Had to be over 50, had to have a certain amount in the bank or a monthly income. I checked all the boxes. Easy. It felt like every piece of the puzzle was just clicking into place. Of course, my mind went there. I'm a trucker. I've spent my life in diners and truck stops. I've heard the stories. Old fool meets young girl. Old fool loses everything. I wasn't an idiot. I told myself I was just going for a look. A 2-week trip. A reconnaissance run. You scout the road before you drive the whole convoy down it. I'd meet her. I'd see if she was who she said she was. I'd keep my wallet in my pocket. I was in complete control of the situation. And every time a little bit of doubt would creep in, every time I'd see a warning sign flashing in the back of my mind, my phone would light up again. I can't wait to show you my city. My family is so excited to meet you. Her attention was like a drug, and it drowned out that quiet, logical part of my brain that was trying to sound the alarm. I was so starved for a little sunshine, I convinced myself the hurricane was just a summer breeze. That Friday, I transferred $10,000 from my main savings into my Charles Schwab checking account, the one with the debit card that works anywhere in the world. And then I bought a round-trip ticket from Detroit to Chiang Mai. Hitting that confirm purchase button didn't feel like a leap of faith. It felt like the most logical, practical thing I had ever done. It felt like I was finally taking the wheel back. Stepping off the plane in Chiang Mai was like stepping into a different world. The air was the first thing that hit me. It wasn't just warm. It was thick, heavy, and smelled of flowers and diesel and food being cooked on 1,000 little street carts. I'd just left a gray Ohio morning with slush on the ground, and now I was in a world of blinding color. My lungs, so used to the cold, dry air of a Peterbilt cab, didn't know what to do with it all. And then I saw her. Nok was even more beautiful than her pictures. She was small, delicate, and when she smiled, it was like someone had turned on a light. She ran right up to me and gave me a hug, burying her face in my chest. "My handsome man," she said, and her voice wasn't just a text on a screen anymore. It was real. For a 63-year-old man who'd felt invisible for 5 years, that moment felt like a miracle. It felt like I'd finally arrived home. Those first 2 weeks were a blur of pure happiness. Every warning light that had been flashing on my dashboard just went dark. Nok was by my side constantly, holding my hand, translating for me, ordering food I'd never heard of that cost less than a cup of coffee back home. A full meal with a cold beer for $3. A taxi ride across the city for $2. I felt like a millionaire. I met her family in their small house on the outskirts of the city. Her mother, her father, her brothers, her cousins, they all treated me with this incredible respect. They called me Gary, but with a reverence, like it was a title. They'd listen when I spoke, even through Nok's translation, hanging on every word. I was the patriarch, the guest of honor. After years of being just an old man in an empty house, I was somebody again. I was important. The first sign came about 10 days in. We were having dinner when Nok got a phone call. Her face just fell. She started talking fast in Thai, her voice filled with panic. When she hung up, she had tears in her eyes. "My mother," she said, her voice trembling. "She is sick. The hospital, they say she needs medicine, a procedure. I don't know." She looked at me, helpless. "It costs so much money." I asked her how much. She looked down at the table, ashamed to even say the number. 45,000 baht, she mumbled. I did the math in my head. About $1,500. My old trucker brain, the one that could spot a con from a mile away at a truck stop, tried to flicker on. But it was no match for the man who was sitting there, holding the hand of a beautiful, crying woman, surrounded by her worried family. I was the man with the plan. I was the provider. I could fix this. $1,500? It was nothing. A drop in the bucket of my $500,000 nest egg. "Don't worry," I told her, and the relief that washed over her face was worth 10 times the price. "I'll take care of it." The next day, I went to the ATM, pulled out the cash, and I gave it to her. It felt good. It felt right. I wasn't just a tourist. I was part of the family. Flying back to Ohio at the end of those 2 weeks was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The color just drained out of the world. The silence in my house wasn't just quiet anymore. It was a physical weight. Every empty room screamed at me. My phone would light up with messages from Nok. "I miss you so much. My mother is much better. Thank you, my hero." And all I could think about was that feeling of being needed, of being important. I'd scouted the road ahead, and it looked perfect. The cost of living was a joke, the woman was a dream, and I had a purpose again. I was done with reconnaissance. It was time to move the whole convoy. 3 months later, I sold the house, I sold the rig, and I was on a one-way flight back to my new life. It wasn't a gamble, it was a sure thing. Moving back to Thailand felt like the final piece of my life's puzzle clicking into place. The first few months were just an extension of that first trip. I wasn't a tourist anymore, I was a resident. I had my retirement visa, a local bank account, and a life. Nak and I found a nice little apartment to rent while we figured out our next move. It cost about $600 a month. I gave her a monthly allowance of $2,000. That covered the rent, the food, the utilities, everything. To me, that seemed perfectly fair. Back in Ohio, my property taxes alone were more than that. Here, $2,000 a month, and I was living in paradise with a beautiful woman. It wasn't a cost. It was an investment in my happiness. I was the provider, the man of the house. It was a role I hadn't played in a long time, and it fit like an old, comfortable glove. I'd spent my whole life checking my mirrors for trouble, but I never saw what was coming up right beside me. The next bill came wrapped in a family crisis. We were visiting her village, about 45 minutes outside the city, when the news came. The family's water buffalo, their most prized possession, was sick. The vet had been called. The whole family was gathered around, speaking in hushed, worried tones. Nak came to me, her eyes wide with panic. The vet needed $3,000 for a special medicine, otherwise the animal would die. Now my brain, my old trucker brain, it flickered for a second. $3,000 for a sick buffalo? The numbers fell off, like an unbalanced load. But what did I know? I'm a guy from Toledo. I've never been closer to a water buffalo than the zoo. Her family was looking at me, not with expectation, but with a kind of desperate hope. I was the rich American. I was the one who could fix things. $3,000 was a lot of money, but it was a rounding error on my $580,000. So I did what the hero of the story does. I paid it. I fixed the problem. And the gratitude I got in return, it made me feel 10 feet tall. That was when the talk of building a house started. It began innocently enough. Why we pay rent? Nak would ask. We are wasting money. We should build our own home. For our future. And it made perfect sense to my practical mind. Owning is better than renting. That's a fundamental rule of the world I came from. It's an investment. She knew a piece of land, a perfect plot in her family's village. A special price, she said, but for locals only. The price was $50,000. This was the first time the real warning bell went off in my head, loud and clear. She explained that for us to get the cheap price, the chanote, the title deed, had to be in her name. It is just for now, she said, squeezing my hand. Just to buy it. It is faster, easier. I hesitated. I'd hauled enough shady loads in my life to know when something smells funny. So she brought in her cousin, the lawyer. We all sat down at a little plastic table, drinking warm Cokes, while he explained it all to me in broken English. He assured me it was a common practice, a temporary formality. Once the land was purchased, we could sort out the paperwork to add my name. It sounded plausible. I mean, he was a lawyer, right? My mind was screaming at me, telling me to hit the brakes, but my heart was doing the talking. I was already picturing the house. I was picturing our life there. I looked at Nak, at her hopeful face, and I just couldn't bring myself to say no. I was so terrified of losing her, of going back to that silence, that I consciously chose to believe the story. I went to my Charles Schwab account online, and I wired $50,000 to her Kasikorn bank account. I hit send, and I felt a knot in my stomach. But I told myself it was just the thrill of the investment. I was all in. Construction started almost immediately. And guess who the contractor was? Another cousin. He gave me a budget. $80,000 for a beautiful, three-bedroom house. It was a steal. I just sold my little house in Toledo for more than double that, and this was going to be brand new, built just for us. I transferred the $80,000, but the 80 quickly became 90, then 100. Every week, there was something else. Supply issues, the cousin would say, shrugging his shoulders. The price of concrete went up. We need to do more work on the foundation. The ground is soft here. We need better windows for the rainy season. It was an endless stream of necessary upgrades. By then, I was pot committed. I was already over $100,000 in on the land and the initial build. I was too far down a dead-end road to just throw it in reverse. I felt like I had to see it through just to protect what I'd already spent. My nest egg, my life's work, was draining away in $10,000 and $20,000 chunks. The total for the house ballooned to $150,000. I had now spent over $200,000 on this dream. The whole time, I kept telling myself, just get it finished. Once the house is done, it'll all be worth it. Once my name is on the deed, it will all be safe. I wasn't happy anymore. I was just anxious. But I was driving forward because it was the only direction I knew. The house was finished. The last transfer of $50,000 cleared my Schwab account. For a day, I felt a sense of relief. We'd done it. The money pit was finally a home. And then, it was like a switch was flipped. The constant stream of my handsome man texts just stopped. The phone in her hand, which used to be a lifeline to me, was now a window into a world I wasn't part of. She'd be on it constantly, scrolling through Facebook, laughing. She started going out at night with her friends, coming back late, smelling of beer and perfume. I'd ask who she was talking to on the phone, these long, animated calls in Thai. She'd just laugh and say, "Nobody, just my friends." The silence I had run away from in Ohio had found me in Thailand. It was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of being ignored in your own home, the home you paid for. I started pushing on the one thing that I thought made it all safe, the deed. "Knock," I'd say. "We need to go see your cousin. We need to get my name on the chaw note." At first, she'd just wave it away. "Tomorrow, tomorrow." Then it became, "He is very busy right now." I tried calling the cousin myself, the lawyer, the man who had looked me in the eye and assured me this was all just a formality. The phone would ring and ring. No answer. I left messages. No reply. The anxiety was a physical knot in my gut, tightening every single day. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting on the porch of our brand new house, watching the rain. She came out, dressed to go out, her purse in her hand. I couldn't do it anymore. I stood up. "Where are you going?" I asked. She just looked at me, annoyed. "Out." That was it. That was all I got. "No," I said. "You're not. Not until you tell me when we are going to that lawyer's office." She sighed, a theatrical, bored sound. "There is no lawyer," she said, her voice flat. Cold. "The house is in my name. The land is in my name." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about? It was a formality. You said, your cousin said." "You gave me the money," she said, cutting me off. Her voice had no trace of the sweet girl I thought I knew. It was hard, like stone. "It was a gift. You wanted to provide for me. I am provided for." The words didn't make sense. A gift? I spent over $200,000. Knock. That's my life savings. We built this for us. She took a step closer, and for the first time, I saw the pure contempt in her eyes. "You built this for me. My house. My land. You wanted a young, beautiful girlfriend. This is the price. I'll go to the police." I stammered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I'll show them the bank transfers. She laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. "Go ahead," she said. "You go to the police. My family will tell them you are an angry old foreigner, that you get drunk and you hit me. They will say you are abusive. Who do you think they will believe? You or a Thai family in their own village? They won't just ignore you. They will deport you." I just stood there, speechless. I looked past her, and two of her brothers were standing by the door. They weren't smiling anymore. They were just watching me. I looked back at Knock. The mask was completely off. I wasn't her handsome man. I wasn't the hero. I was just a mark, a fool, a job that was now finished. I made a move toward the door, my door. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I had. That's when the brothers stepped forward. They didn't run. They just walked toward me. One grabbed my left arm, the other grabbed my right. Their grips were like iron. They walked me off the porch, down the steps, and onto the muddy path. They didn't say a word. They just pushed me forward, away from the house. When I was at the edge of the property, they let go. One of them pointed down the road. I stood there, in the rain, looking at the house I had paid for, the house I was no longer allowed to enter. I had exactly $1,247 left in the world, and I just started walking. So that's how I got here, to this little apartment on the other side of Chiang Mai. It's bare. The rent is low. I live on my Social Security checks, and that's about it. The nest egg, the $250,000 I burned through, is gone. My life's work. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a humiliation in that's hard to describe. But I'm sharing this because that humiliation is cheaper than the price of your silence. So for any man out there thinking of making a similar journey, I want you to listen. I'm going to give you the lessons that cost me $250,000 to learn. First, never, and I mean never, under any circumstances, put land or property in another person's name. It doesn't matter what they promise you. It doesn't matter if their cousin is a lawyer. In Thailand, the name on that piece of paper, the chonot, is the owner. Period. There is no court that will listen to you. There is no legal recourse. The moment you wire that money for something that isn't in your name, it's gone. It has ceased to be your money. It's a gift. Remember that. Second, the family emergency is a script. My God, it's a script. The sick mother who needs $1,500 for a mystery procedure. The sick water buffalo that costs $3,000. It's a test. That's all it is. It's an audition to see if you're a source of cash. They're checking your load limit. If it happens early on, that isn't a relationship you're building. It's a business transaction, and you're the only one who doesn't have the balance sheet. Third, real affection doesn't come with a wire transfer request. I got so caught up in wanting to be the provider, the protector, the big man who could solve any problem with his checkbook. But I wasn't a provider. I was just a customer. If you find yourself sending money to feel loved, you need to stop and understand you're not buying love. You're just paying for a very, very expensive fantasy. I'm not telling you to avoid Thailand. It's a wonderful country with wonderful people. But I am telling you to lead with your head, not your lonely heart. The romance scam isn't new. It's just gotten more sophisticated. Before you send $1, before you sell your house, ask yourself the question I didn't. Would she still be with me if I showed up with nothing but my social security check? If you can't answer that with 100% certainty, then stay home. If my story can stop just one guy from making the same $250,000 mistake I did, then sharing this embarrassment was worth it. Subscribe for more real stories, not the fairy tales they sell you in the travel brochures.